guys, it's Cassandra Williams from Educational Innovation 360. Today we're talking about teacher tips, but really thinking about how do we need to change to create better assessment in our classrooms, especially today. You know, we constantly focus on research and trends, but I also want to give you some practical examples that you can use to kind of think of how do we create assessments in the kind of face of artificial intelligence, and even what does that look like. So some of the things that I'm seeing in the classroom is we are continuing on with our kind of traditional assessments, you know, that kind of measure one thing really well, and that's kind of call and response, like that content recall. But sometimes we miss the skills that, you know, typically matter the most. Of course, we have our high stakes testing, of course, that's designed for a specific type of students, sorting students, and not thinking about how do we use testing or assessments to prepare students for kind of life beyond our schools. So, of course, we need to really focus and rethink on how do we measure our students' progress and potential. So how do we move from, you know, content recall, of course, move through critical thinking, collaboration, and, you know, really thinking about our thinking, which is metacognition. I challenge you to think of assessment as a kind of a 3.0. Like, what do we need to do next? Now, some of these things are already in place, so it's nothing new. It's just kind of making a shift of doing more. Instead of kind of ranking students, what are we doing to nurture and support their growth throughout times? You know, this means that more personalized assessments, multi-modal, multi-dimensional demonstrations of learning, thinking of like, what does personalized assessment mean for that student? How do students even want to be to check for their understanding, really? And think about what do we need to do to guide our students over time, and thinking about how we're just not just measuring what students know, but show how they're growing with the learning. So, you know, of course, we have the portfolio. This is kind of nothing new, but really being able to put content in a portfolio to demonstrate learning, using authentic real world tasks where they have to do or demonstrate what they've learned. Of course, feedback throughout, you know, being able to narrate their feedback, narrate the grade, why, what they've done to kind of improve different points. Of course, self-assessment, and then looking at the teacher collaboration, like having students and teachers share, teachers sharing their rubric, or it is co-designed by not only the teacher, but also the student. So, of course, we talked about like how AI is changing things and the revolution that comes with that. You know, maybe it looks like portfolio-based assessment, students showcasing their work across multiple subjects. It's not separate in individual domains. Of course, the real-world assessments of narrative feedback, and just to ensure that families are kind of along for the ride and looking at trying to see what that looks like. But really thinking about a systematic approach to continue with mini micro assessments to get support and feedback faster to grow for personalized learning, right? And so although some people with AI think, oh my goodness, you know, we're facilitating this kind of plagiarism, but really being able to have policy in place to support teachers, as well as discovering how teachers and leaders can leverage AI to support mini modules for student assessment for faster feedback and turnaround and growth. So there's this AI revolution, thinking of what does AI bring to assessment. Of course, we talked about the micro assessments, you know, low stake mini assessments to understand what students need to do to grow without kind of bombarding teachers with all this assessment and paperwork, thinking about how do we support students with individualized learning paths, and what does that look like, where the learner continuously being challenged by the content, how are we using data analytics to identify who is struggling and how to support them, and what extra practice they will need to meet their goal, and then thinking about how do we think of what are the insights, to where now we have found the data dashboards provide us with this insight. So what do we need to do as teachers to leverage these insights to support our students in the ongoing growth for their learning path? So one of the things we're thinking about as educators is how do we have AI plus human to support our students? And so teachers are kind of dabbling in the AI era right now. You are seeing some teachers looking at like, okay, how do I provide assessments that are dripped content for students who are ready? What does it take to prepare students? And then what does it take to kind of look and examining some of the histories of the students or the logins or how long they've took on this task, and being able to support students in their journey, so being more process oriented. Then of course with the digital portfolios, like looking at artifacts, whether they're pulling from content, including images and text, video artifacts, and being able to think about what is the output even need to display in order for me to to show my expertise in this area. And then it's the feedback loop. What happens when? So now in the digital era, our students are kind of demanding that our reflections on assessments become quicker. And so in the age of AI, we are providing better, quicker feedback, allowing students to resubmit work, even thinking about like our evaluations and what does that look like for our learning tools, but being able to think about how does the feedback loop need to look for students to kind of repurpose work or re-upload to show mastery of a skill. Of course, like I said, self-assessment, reflection opportunities, and then collaboration, like not only collaborating peer-to-peer, but collaborating with maybe other disciplines, collaborating with work, companies, leadership, administration, like what does that even look like? And then what does the teamwork look like to ensure students are getting exactly what they need in order to be successful in your classroom? So right now we're seeing, of course, the online submission for work. I know teachers are building AI spaces to kind of reiterate some of the teaching rubrics that you're starting to see that teachers are creating. You're seeing multiple drafts being uploaded and feedback being provided for students to make growth in specific areas or specific domain in teachers' rubric. You are having teachers having the ability to provide a video reflection on student work to kind of explain what they're thinking. And students can do it both as well. So thinking of how are we allowing students to be able to dive into self-reflection and the feedback loops, okay? And so also thinking about like what does the brainstorming session look like? And so that could look like, hey, let me just talk out my thoughts. Maybe I can do a talk and type. Maybe I can kind of record my thoughts, brainstorm my thoughts on paper, take a picture of it, and then maybe have something online analyze some of the key points in my work, right? Are we using AI for writing? Are we using AI for brainstorming? Is it hands off? Do students even know like, hey, this is red. Red means no AI in the initial phases. Maybe green for when it's time to make modifications or edits based on the rubric on School AI, and what does that look like? So being able to not only provide the criteria of the expectation of what you want to see, but also the color-coded system of what is a go for AI and kind of what is not allowed. So students no longer have to guess the gray area. They already know in this component I can use AI for feedback and support. I commend our teachers right now. They are trying things different, and this is challenging because not only are they learning a skill, but they're teaching it on the fly. So a lot of our teachers are embracing new ideas for learning and looking at like, how do I guide student growth and what is the ultimate goal here? Even though we do have these curriculum books and we want to make sure students are mastering these skills, what other resources can I bring in as a project-based learning type of skill to be able to have students access the curriculum? And so some of our teachers are really thoughtfully leveraging AI, whether it be, I was in a classroom the other day supporting a teacher and I was helping her write the back end from a book. And so we were thinking about like what kind of questions that students will be asking about the book, being able to clarify content. So AI spaces have been wonderful for allowing teachers to kind of navigate what AI could be for student use. And then thinking of what does the output even look like? What do the tasks look like? What does the project look like? Maybe it's a podcast. Maybe it's thinking about how do we leverage student strengths to create the output. So not only being a singular way to address, has the student understood the content? And then, of course, thinking about their thinking. One of the things that we do religiously is document our prompts that we've put in so we can kind of follow the path. Now, granted, when we follow the path, it's never a direct line to outputting similar content, but it's allowing students to really thinking about, their thinking about teacher feedback, and then having students kind of develop or chart their kind of learning growth or learning process that they've taken into it. And then collaborate professionally. One of the things we do is, for rubrics, it's one thing to kind of co-develop a rubric, but it's another thing to kind of think about what are our shared learning goals we want to be able to have our students master by the end. I think, again, our path forward is being able to co-plan, co-create, and co-support our students in growing through this time that we are unsure about where this AI is going. So thinking about the holistic student-centered approach, really what do we need to know to make sure we support our students beyond the classroom? How do we embrace different usage assessments and formative checks? How do we teach the ethical use to be able to leverage AI, just being very considerate and thoughtful? How do we use multidimensional, multi-modal assessments for a diverse set of learning experience? Of course, jotting down or writing down the thinking about a path forward and what we need to do. And I think when we're looking to build this kind of professional learning experience, I feel like it's an experiment. We're all working to try to figure out ways to support our students, and we know the true support is, are our students engaged? Are they reflective? Are they kind of excited about the opportunities that relate to real world context? I hope this helps. Talk to you later for more. Bye.